Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have with me an incredible freedom fighter, an incredible patriot. Many people ask me, what can I do to make a difference in my community, in my state, and in our country with all this totalitarian stripping of people's freedoms and liberties? People ask, what can I do? Well, my answer to all those folks for many months has been two words: Karl Manke. Karl Manke is your answer. And that who is joining us here today. It's my honor to welcome Karl. A little background on Karl. He is America's barber. You have heard about him. You have seen about him in the news throughout our country. This was recently written about Karl. Quote, "He will stand up for you," end quote. One of the last remaining and most familiar symbols of small-town America is the barber pole. The local independent barber, though dwindling in many places, is still a welcoming, nostalgic figure on many Midwestern main streets today, actually throughout our country. Karl Manke has been cutting hair for 3 generations at his shop on Main Street in Owasso, Michigan. At 77 years of age and still full of curiosity and enthusiasm, much to the chagrin, might I add, of Gretchen Whitmer, the totalitarian governor of the state of Michigan, he's a community fixture. Karl is, of course, like so many Main Street barbers, many things to many people. A listening ear, a source of local news and insight, common sense, wisdom, and humor, an armchair psychologist, and a practical philosopher, and even more. He is a popular published author of 10 novels. Now, Karl was a fixture in northern Michigan and has been, as I mentioned, for 3 generations. But all of our lives changed in January this year with the coming ashore, if you will, from China of the coronavirus. And in March, in particular in Michigan, the governor of Michigan locked everyone down. I have stated, and I get a lot of grief for this, but I stand behind it, Michigan is the largest POW camp in all of the United States. Why? Because our Commandant Klink, remember from Hogan's Heroes, Commandant Klink, the Commandant Klink of governors, Gretchen Whitmer, locked us down. And many people did not stand for it, demanded the data and the science of which she could not present. Karl Manke came to the forefront in March on behalf of not just the people of Owasso, not just his barbershop, not just the citizens of the state of Michigan, but for every American citizen. It's my honor to welcome Karl Manke. Karl, welcome to the Insider Insight Show.
Thank you very kindly. Nice to be here.
So, Karl, educate our listeners. Take us back to March and what transpired in your barbershop that had a huge transformation for folks across our country.
Well, it started actually the April 30th when our legislature told our governor that she was to stand down now, that her extended emergency rule was over. It was up. Now she was going to have to work with them. Well, this she took offense to. She refused to, and she took the law into her own hands and decided that she was not only the governor who was the executive, but now she was also going to become the maker of laws. And she extended it herself on a 1945, an old 1945 law that was based on some problems that Michigan had back after World War I or World War II. And they had given the governor at that time emergency powers. Well, they rescinded that in certain ways in 1976, but she leaped over that one and back to the 1945 because it was stronger for her and for her position. So, at that time, my wife and I, we had already been off from work here for 5 weeks. Our bills were piling up. My taxes were due. I mean, even though the governor was, she was trying everything she could possibly do to keep revenues from coming in, she was still demanding her taxes. So we had that tax. Those Michigan taxes were due. My insurances were all due on my business. And I could see no way that I was going to go on, with this illegal part on her part of shutting Michigan down. So we were, my wife and I decided that we talked about it, And we were up north at the time. We have a cottage up north. And we were talking about what we were going to do. And she said, well, you might go to jail if you do this. And I said, I know that's a possibility. So, I thought about it. I'm kind of claustrophobic. And I spent some time in the bathroom. I locked the door in the bathroom. Bathroom's not very large. It's just a small room. To see how I could feel about being locked up, and confined into an area. So I practiced that all afternoon. And I made my decision. I think I can get through this claustrophobic thing. And I'm going to open up my business. I have a right to work. This is the first time in Michigan's history, or in our country's history, that we have quarantined healthy people. Mm-hmm. And this is crazy. Mm-hmm. I thought, we can't do this. I just can't. I was looking for loopholes in some ways, and somehow maybe I would be able to get out of having to do what I knew I had to do. But it was so strong, it was so powerful within me that I just knew I had to do this. So that old serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept those things that I cannot change, the courage to change those things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That became my mantra. Mm-hmm. I prayed that prayer all the way to my barber shop that Monday morning that I opened up. And, I'm not I'm as like every other human being. You're faced with a certain amount of fearful conditions, danger of some sort. You have what I call the 3 F's. You freeze for that moment, and you have you process what's going on. And then you have to make a decision. Am I going to flee or am I going to fight? And I was looking for loopholes to flee, but I could not find any. I knew I had to fight. So I opened up my shop. And that day I opened up was fine. People were coming in and, oh yeah, you're open and good and, all this. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this is going to work out. The second day I opened, about an hour in, I turn around and I look at my door, and there stands a sheriff guy with fully uniformed, about 6'2", 6'3", and I thought, oh boy, here I go. I've always made the statement, that I was either going to go out in handcuffs or I'd go out when Jesus came, one or the other. But it was. Right. I thought today is handcuffs. Right. The guy, he says, Karl. He says, look at me. He had this sort of commanding voice. And I looked over at him. He says, I love you. And he turned around and got in his car and drove off. Then I knew, that maybe I have some support here that I didn't know that even existed, because I came in here alone. Mm-hmm. I came in here without any support. I had no idea. I kind of quizzed myself a little bit. Am I being foolhardy? Am I being belligerent with this? The more I thought about that, and more I kind of really went deep. But that wasn't my point. My point was I wanted to go back to work. I needed to go back to work. And it was a driving force for me that my opportunities and my right to work under the Constitution were being violated by this. Like you put it, this is the biggest POW camp, in the country, mm-hmm. in the state of Michigan. And I knew I had to come back to work. And the volunteers that suddenly began to show up, I was the only barber shop open in the world, as far as I knew. And people from all over this country were coming in here. All of a sudden, I'm opening up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm leaving the next morning at 1:30. I'm working 15, 16-hour days with people coming in here. Some were for haircuts. Some were just to come in and support me. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people went through this barbershop during that period of time. So it really has. It's been life-changing in some ways, I guess, but it's incremental in this sense that I haven't noticed it. I'm still amazed, when I do book signings. I was up north in our Traverse City area and Frankfurt area here in Michigan and Frankenmuth area. And then people actually, they know who I am. I mean, months ago, I was just willing to stand in front of my windows here, and about every 20th car go by, I knew who it was, and I'd wave, and they'd wave back, and that was all the fame I needed. I didn't need any more than that, but this thing, now, all of a sudden, this thing has exploded, or in some ways, in good ways, if I like, when people tell me I'm America's barber, I like that, because I am an American and I am a barber. I kind of sort of flinch a little bit when they say I'm their hero. I understand that, but I wish they were their hero. I wish they were doing what I'm doing. I know they support me in many different ways, and we've each been given different types of gifts, and I know that maybe this is mine. Sometimes we wonder, what are these gifts God has for us? Well, maybe this is mine, and maybe theirs is to support me. So they've supported me in so many different ways. From one little lady, she knitted my wife's and I socks. That was like the widow's mite. This was just, so appreciative on my part and my wife's part. Others, just pulling. We had a news conference out here with Shelley Luther from Texas. The gal that Christopher went to jail down there for doing what I'm doing. And it was pouring rain. I mean, a torrential rain that day. And we had a tent set up, and it was packed with news people and just, people that were there to support. And they're trying to get me out of there after the thing is over with. And this little lady in a wheelchair, and I don't even know how she got there. She's got an umbrella, and she's wet. She's wet from the rain. And she grabs out, and she reaches and pulls me down. And she says, "Karl, I'm praying for you." It just tore me up. I never heard this kind of support before in my life. And people, they GoFundMes, all of a sudden, my wife and I had talked about, well, what's this gonna, this might cost us something. We had a little extra money in some lots that we own up north. And we thought, well, maybe we're gonna have to sell these. Maybe we'll have to sell them for attorneys, this type of thing. Well, all of a sudden, again, I look at it like, the footprints in the sand story, where the footprints, and then the man says, well, to God, why did you leave me? And when he only saw the one set of footprints, and that was when God says, well, that was when I was carrying you.
That's right. So
this is me, through this thing, all of a sudden I have attorneys coming out. I had all kinds of these guys that were going to be pro bono and this kind of thing. I didn't know who they were. The right one showed up, and I knew immediately that I had a connection with this guy, and he was capable, and so far he has been wonderful. And the other part, which I could add to some of these guys out east with their gyms. One of the things that the government depends on is that they have unlimited resources, money-wise. They hope to break you.
Yes.
They can stop you. Well, they don't know about these GoFundMe things today. All of a sudden, the more the government pushed, the more the GoFundMe began to take place. My attorney fees have been taken care of. And again, it's one of these miraculous things that I had nothing to do with other than just my stand, my position, my whatever it is, that this gift that God has maybe given me for this particular part of my life. I have no idea, but whatever it is, I feel that it's very strong within me to stand up, and to.
Karl, one of the many things that Gretchen Whitmer has done as the governor of Michigan that I believe is reprehensible is she started this classification business about essential versus non-essential. As a physician that took care of folks on the front line of healthcare delivery of 32 years, every person is essential. And every person that has their job to them and to our community and to our country is essential. For example, when she shut down barbershops and many other businesses, restaurants across the state and the like, what she deemed to be non-essential were liquor stores, recreational marijuana dispensaries, sales of lotto tickets could continue, abortion clinics, and she deemed all of these entities, Karl, as and people think I'm making this up. Even abortion clinics that she kept open, she claimed were essential to, quote, sustaining human life, end quote.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you something about that. I'll get to the whole, kind of through it, but that essential part, I turned around, this was in the middle of the week, that first week I was open, and I turn around, I see this guy standing in my doorway here, and he's got some type of a garbage thing made out of plastic around his head, and then he had a mask on.
Yeah.
He had 2 garbage bags, one up to his arm and one up to the other arm, and rubber gloves on. Then he had another garbage bag over him with his arms extending through the sides of this thing. He had like a pair of waiter boots with the garbage bags taped around his legs all the way up to his thigh on both legs. Now you tell that guy that haircuts aren't essential? Even though it was crazy what he was doing, he was scared to death, but he needed a haircut that bad that it overcome his fears that he was going to go home and have to, completely wash down somehow and clean himself up. He needed a haircut, so that was, telling Gretchen Whitmer, I'm sure her hair wasn't done by, she Googled it and did her own hair, like she recommended everybody else to do.
Well, and Karl, educate our listeners then. That one police officer came the second day you were open, and I love you, Karl, and left. But then at one point, the state police showed up, correct?
Oh, yes.
So educate our listeners on, wasn't there, when the state police showed up, and tell me if I'm wrong, but if I remember this correctly, wasn't there another police officer in your barber chair?
Well, he was in the shop. He was waiting for a haircut. He was observing all this. He was the one that gave me the patch.
Okay, so the state police showed up to educate our listeners what happened, because many people would have run and hidden. Okay.
Well, the state police showed up. They out here in front of my shop were people that were, in a sense, supporting me. They had flags, and there was all different kinds of people out there. There were First Amendment people, there were Second Amendment people. Some of them were armed. Some of them, showing their the right to bear arms, they're protected under the Second Amendment, and I suppose when the state police heard that, that, they were going to use it to their advantage. Whitmer was, or the AG was going to use that to their absolute advantage. Mm-hmm. So they sent 6 state policemen, I believe it was 6 state policemen, and then they sort of positioned themselves, around as they came in, that they were going to have to, maybe battle their way in here or shoot their way in or something of this sort. And, in the meantime, in here, I had right over here in my corner, I had a mother with quadruplets. And I had families throughout this whole barbershop, with kids waiting for haircuts and moms and dads and all that. And people eating lunch and all kinds of things. And they come in, very official. And I'm sure they're looking around wondering, what are we doing?
Right.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Like the guy said, they left me the patch. He says he was watching all this. He says they don't want to do that. He says they really don't want to do that. He says, but they're obliged to do that under the AG, the Attorney General, Governor. That's the governor's troopers. That's her police force.
So what did they say to you, Karl, when they walked in?
Well, they gave me the cease and desist order.
Oh.
That's what they gave me. And I looked at them and I said, well, thank you very much. I said, you guys look like you need a haircut. I said, I'll take care of you. I says, I'm not closing up.
And they just left?
They just left.
Yeah, okay. So that didn't work. So the show of force from Whitmer and the AG, this Dana Nessel, that didn't stop Karl. So then, no. Karl, tell me if I'm wrong. Then they decided, okay, we're going to pull his license. Isn't that what they did?
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. The next thing, okay, we have to nip this in the bud, so to speak. So this they decided they were going to just, without a hearing, do this police tactic. This police state tactic where they begin now to see. There's a difference in my mind. There's a difference between governing and ruling.
Right.
Well, a governor will, that's the way a stateswoman or a statesman, would govern, where they take your constitutional rights and assure you that all of those are going to be delivered and you will enjoy all of your constitutional rights. Well, a ruler, on the other hand, they like to be considered as leaders, and I'm not going to be ruled and I'm not going to be led. I mean, you lead sheep and you lead dogs and you lead horses, but you don't lead people. That's in my mind, you govern, and the governor is there as a public servant. And this is what she has lost. She lost this concept of being a public servant. And she has become what she refers to, and she wants to be a rock star within the Democrat Party. In my mind, all her behavior points in that direction.
Agreed.
The people in the state of Michigan are secondary. They're the pawns. They are the people. This is a stepping stone for me now to become something within the Democrat Party. And when you have career politicians, I would rather have statesmen and stateswomen. Politicians don't impress me on either side of the aisle. I like women and statesmen and stateswomen.
So they rescinded your license.
Yeah.
Okay, then what happened?
Well, I got that cease and desist order.
Yeah.
Went to the Supreme Court.
So did you keep your shop open during all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just kept going.
I kept going.
And the state police didn't show up anymore.
No, they didn't show up.
So then you went. So Karl said, okay. So the appeals court said, yeah, that's a good thing, that cease and desist thing. But then you took it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well,
Michigan.
The AG sent two of her guys over here.
And what happened then?
Well, they came in and said they updated me that I was illegal, And I was very kind to these guys.
Did you offer him a haircut?
Yeah, I offered him a haircut.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Well, you guys look like you need a haircut. Come down here, and I'll work you in.
Yeah.
Can't we do that? We can't. They were nice guys. I mean, these guys, these state policemen and all of these law enforcement people, this is stuff under this type of administration. Yeah. No. They don't want to be doing this stuff. No. I mean, they see through it too as the silliness and it's silly, but at the same time, it's serious because it has an effect on people's lives.
That's right. And then you went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with you, didn't they, in a unanimous decision?
7-0.
And what did they say, Karl? They said some great stuff.
Yeah, I know. It was really, I mean, if you can imagine that you're the attorney that worked day and night on this brief, sent to the highest court in the state of Michigan.
Right.
And they came back and said, we don't act on hysteria. We act on the rule of law. So they told him their brief was hysterical. It was based on hysteria rather than the rule of law, which, again, now it had no effect on them. I mean, it's almost as though, that's just the way we do business here type of thing. But yeah, so we're back to, where my license is back in jeopardy again. They had to give me my license back. But now, they have this license review board here. And, you pretty much know it's stacked, right. In that sense. We did have we have an expert witness now that's come forward, and when they realized that, they immediately adjourned the hearing, and postponed it until next month so they can process all of that and see what they're going to do with that.
So Karl, right now where it stands is the Board of Licensing is looking at your license. It's under review. They've put it off for another month. You've brought an expert witness in. You have attorneys on this.
Yeah.
How can they suspend your license? Because right now in the state of Michigan, barbershops and beauty salons, a lot of credit goes to you on this, are now open.
Yeah.
So how can they suspend your license because
That's
of what?
It's a good question. Because they can. I mean, under this emergency ruling, it opens up a whole different type of as long as she can do that, as long as, it's still permissible for her to do that until the Supreme Court rules on that. She has a tremendous amount of legal power that goes into effect that defends that emergency process. So she's done a lot of things that'll probably, if the Supreme Court comes back, which I cannot imagine. I just, in my own mind's eye, I cannot imagine that the Supreme Court is going to act that deleteriously, in the favor of the people in the state of Michigan, that they're going to actually uphold the Constitution and uphold our rule of law, not this hysteria as it's been stated.
Karl, are you, since you've been open, are you aware of any of your customers developing coronavirus or COVID-19?
I don't know how this, one of the volunteers here, he's kind of a computer guy. I don't know. I hear things.
Yeah.
He has sort of hacked around, and he found out who was doing the governor's hair and things like that, I don't know how he does this stuff, but he does, he found that Whitmer, our governor, had employed a contact tracing team, a company that does that.
Yeah.
And they had contact traced something like 3,000 people or so that went through my shop, hoping that they were going to get one.
Yeah.
So they got nothing. They got nothing out of it. So.
Yeah, that contract tracing firm that she initially contracted with was a Democratic operative team,
Yeah, that's what I understand.
They were a bunch of political hacks. They had no functional medical knowledge.
No.
And she took state money and paid for these Democrat hacks who also do this consulting around the country, and they don't have any functional medical knowledge, Karl.
No, yeah. Well,
so they monitored 3,000 of your customers and came up empty.
That was what I heard. That was I got that back. Well, I got a lot of things back. At one point she had I heard through the grapevine that she was willing to offer me that she would drop all charges. If I would close my shop, if I would, cease and desist. Well, I countered with that and said, well, I will if you'll resign. And that, of course, I never heard anything.
Hey, Karl, I got a great idea. There's these rumors that she's totally into Botox. My suggestion is you should also bring in some Botox specialists to be in your store, and that is another way to shield yourself from her coming after you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
So, Karl, so right now where it stands is you're cutting hair, you're serving your community, you're serving our country, not just our state, our country, in your freedom agenda. And right now it's in front of this board of licensing, which we're not sure why, because barbershops and beauty salons are now open in Michigan.
Yeah. Well, because I defied her. See, I defied.
Yeah, I know. It's the same old thing.
See, what the charges were, I was in imminent danger to the community. Well, There was no data. They say that. I mean, you can say that about some chewing bubble gum. They could choke on it or spit out.
She's Karl. You talk about giving imminent danger to our state. Here's the dirty little secret nobody wants to talk about. She talks about her contact tracing. Well, you know what? There's been many of us that have looked at her contact tracing. If you look back at where Michigan became a hot spot, starting March 8th, 9th, and 10th, she campaigned for her guy Biden trying to get the vice presidency slot throughout Detroit, Dearborn, and Livonia. Those three areas, 2 weeks later, because it's a 2-week lag, those three areas became the hot spot of Michigan. So if there's anyone that has become an essential danger to Michigan, it's her. And by the way, the latest increase we had, it just so happened it was after she did her Black Lives Matter protest march with people in the state. With, by the way, no social distancing, many people not wearing masks, the whole shooting match, Karl.
This is all of this thing. Of course, there's bigger pictures involved in all of this, and you know, this struggle for power, it almost seems as though, in my mind's eye, that any type of government, regardless of what it is, and this is one of the reasons why I believe we have the Second Amendment. It was already recognized by our founding fathers.
I agree.
That there is a tendency for any government to become oppressive. Oftentimes they don't realize it. And what it happens is we live, all of us, I don't care whether it was back at the time of Jesus Christ or if it's back right now. We live right on the edge of what we're capable of doing ourselves. We live very stressful lives. Now, when you can have Mother Whitmer, which is not my mother, to say, I'm going to manage your stress for you.
Right.
I'm going to manage your risk for you.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful appeal to people who are stressful.
Yes.
Don't really have a good spiritual connection.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll rely on the government to become their leader. You know, and isn't it wonderful? The governor is keeping us all alive. Isn't it wonderful?
Right.
When I see these masks, you're wearing these masks, you know, they're riding around in their own car with rubber gloves on and the windows rolled. You know, I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's become more of a symbolic compliance.
Yeah. That's right, Karl. So, Karl, throughout, and I'll let you go because I know you got your adoring fans waiting for you there. Throughout this experience, is it surprised you the number of maybe, let's say, well-known individuals that have gotten in touch with you and say, "Hey, we support you"?
Oh man, where do they come from? I mean, you know, all of us. I'm not used to this.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Who surprised you the most getting in touch with you?
Like for example, the senators. You know, I mean, our politicians here in the state. Swiss TV, no, Australian TV.
Yeah.
You know, the London Times.
Did Donald Trump get in touch with you?
You know, I heard that he had talked about it, but it never. I don't know whether he did or not. I mean, I haven't heard anything. You know, really. You know, I don't know. I don't know.
What about blowback, Karl? Have you gotten a lot of blowback, if you will, from the zealots? What?
It's almost to the point where it's so minute.
Interesting.
Happen. It's funny. I mean, to me, it just is funny. I was doing a book signing up in Frankfurt, Michigan, over the weekend, and all of a sudden, this guy drives by and he's got a mask on. Of course, he's disguised, and he runs his window down, and he shouts out at me, "Trump's an idiot!"
Oh, okay.
He drives on. Yeah. Or the guy that I was in Traverse City and. The week before, and I was doing a book signing there, and the mask was down around my neck. In compliance with the people that own the bookstore, I'm outdoors, but they preferred that I would at least have one, so they don't have the store closed up again. So this guy comes by, and he's an old guy about my age, and he says, well, you'd probably be selling a lot more books if you'd wear that mask properly. I could just feel the hair coming up on the back of my neck. I said, what are you, some kind of mascot? I said, I probably like you a lot better if you just mind your own business.
Yeah.
Trot it off. But, this is the kind of stuff I don't.
So, Karl, all of our listeners want to know how they can get your book, how they can follow your efforts. You have a website. Educate our listeners how they can follow you and get in touch with you.
Well, I have, I do. I have a website, karlmanke.com. I also, on my, I don't know if that website is connected to my email, but my email address is Clipperking, KLIPPERKING @gmail.com, all small letters. And
is that the GoFundMe site too, or is that on your website?
Yeah, I'm so computer stupid. I don't know how all this stuff works. I know it's working, but I've authored 10 novels.
Wow.
I was on Glenn Beck's show a while back, and there's one called The Age of Shame that sort of it hits on a lot of this stuff because it took place during the Holocaust period.
Oh.
When Hitler was propagandizing the Jewish people at that time in the Warsaw Ghetto. There were 800,000 of them packed into a 1 square mile area. They never had more than 150 that were willing to stand up and bear arms. They were very compliant. And as a matter of fact, compliant to the point that if their younger people would cause trouble by resisting anything that was going on there, they'd turn them in. These people willingly got onto those cattle cars because they were promised, one, safety, and a less stressful life.
Yeah. Well.
You know, and I'm not getting on any cattle cars.
You and me both.
No.
So
I've written 10 novels, but they can review those on my website.
And the website again is Karl, Karl Manke, MANKE.com. Karl, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You are an incredible inspiration and role. I know you don't want this, but an incredible inspiration and role model for every person who values freedom, liberty, and if you will, what this country was founded on, what the founding fathers based this entire country on. And I thank you, Karl, for the courage, the perseverance, and the sacrifice you have made on behalf of every American.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. I really do. I hope this inspires other people to also become their own hero.
That's exactly it. And you have that, and you do that, and you do that 24/7, and I thank you. Folks, until next time, Dave Jandis signing off. My dad's favorite statement, his favorite quote was dream big and dare to fail. Karl Manke is the epitome of that statement, and I thank you. Until next time, Dave Jandis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.